Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Chara zor-el here, and before we get into today's video, there's something I'd like to say. I'd like to let you all know that we have a merch store! Some of the items in it are available only for a limited amount of time. So if you're interested, go into the description and check it out. Each purchase helps us make more content. Secondly, if this video hits 1,000 likes by the end of the week, we will continue this what if. Thirdly, if you didn't know, only 41.3% of you guys are subscribed to us, so please, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the story. Things started to look grim. The sight of All For One taking down 3 pro heroes at once terrified them. Deku glanced at his classmates to see if they were all right. They all looked hopeless. They wouldn't be able to save Bakugou. There was no way to get past that villain. Yorozu looked ill and felt like she had to vomit after she saw such a horrific scene. Ida never felt this terrified ever since he faced the hero killer Stain. Kirishima looked frozen in place, overwhelmed with fear. Todoroki looked tense as he tried to see if there was an opportunity for them to run away. Deku and the others had no choice but to leave, because they knew if they stayed there any longer, they would have been caught or killed. However, they couldn't bring themselves to move. They were frightened at the possibility to face a monstrous villain. The small group stayed, stuck, and had nowhere to go. They all heard a familiar voice that came from the villain's direction.
Damn it! The hell?
Bakugou felt very confused and had no idea where he was. He was on his knees, coughing after being choked by the disgusting warp gate being brought to All For One's location. Bakugou looked up to see who stood before him. It was a man who wore a suit with a black life support helmet with tubes attached to it. Bakugou glared at the villain and was prepared to fight at any moment. My apologies, Bakugou. After All For One apologized, he brought out the rest of the League of Villains to him. They all came out of warp gates from All For One's quirk. The villains fell to the ground, which surrounded Bakugou, but were confused as well. Bakugou wondered, what the heck was going on? So, you failed once more, Tomura. All For One sounded disappointed at Shigaraki for almost getting captured by the heroes. He slowly walked up to his successor and counseled him for his failures. But you must not be discouraged. You'll try again. That's why I brought your associates back with you. Even this child, because you judged that he was an important piece on your game board. All For One approached Shigaraki and reached out his hand. He left his hand out for Shigaraki to grab, the same way he did when he first found Shigaraki as a lonely child. Start over as many times as it takes. I'm here to provide you with help. All of this is for you. The mastermind of the League of Villains stood before the League's very own eyes. He was very intimidating, which had the villains staring in awe. It was an amazing and terrifying sight to see All For One. However, Deku and the others cowered in fear, and the fact that Bakugou was there made the situation more dire. Despite the overwhelming fear, Deku felt he knew something must be done. Deku debated with himself whether or not he should take action. After he analyzed the situation, Deku was determined to save Bakugou. However, Ida glanced at Deku and noticed that look on his face. He realized that Deku was about to go and act. Ida grabbed hold onto his shirt very tightly. He squeezed as hard as he could, warning him not to move. Deku noticed this and stopped. The two boys paused. They knew that if they took action, it would risk their lives. Ah, there you are. All For One sensed a familiar presence. It started to head towards him at full speed. He stood there and anticipated an attack. It was All Might who came to rescue Bakugou. He charged at the villain with a powerful force. However, All For One held onto All Might's fist and created a tiny whirlwind in the process due to their clash. They both locked hands, pushing against one another.
I'll have you return my student, All For One!
After he finally arrived at the scene, All Might looked fierce and demanded Bakugou's retrieval. Instead of his broad smile, it was more mirthless and angry kind of smile. Have you come to kill me a second time, All Might? They both used enough power that the ground beneath them shattered and created a dust cloud, blowing away everyone on sight. The building that contained all the Nomu was fully destroyed, only leaving an open area. No, there's too many of them. Deku was worried about All Might. He was all alone and outnumbered. They continued to hide and wait for a chance to move. Unfortunately, they can't interfere with All Might's fight. They are still heroes in training. The law prohibited them from taking action against villains even though it's the right thing to do. The only way to help Bakugou without the rules being violated was for them to receive their provisional licenses. The dust cleared to reveal that All for One wasn't harmed at all.
It took you long enough to find us. It's only 5 kilometers from the bar to here, and yet it was at least 30 seconds after I sent the Nomu that you arrived. You've gotten weaker, All Might. You're one to talk. It's kind of difficult to ignore that fancy life support mask you've got on. Aren't you overexerting yourself?
All Might glared at All for One while he stretched himself to launch another attack. Bakugou was stunned to see how powerful All for One really was. He witnessed him holding back against All Might's attack with his bare hands. He realized the villain that stood before him was the mastermind of the League of Villains.
I won't repeat the mistake I made 5 years ago. You hear me? I will take young Bakugou back, and I will make certain you're locked up for the rest of your sad life right along with your despicable League of Villains.
All Might charged at All for One once again. He brought back his right arm to throw in a powerful smash.
Sounds like you've got your work cut out for you. This will make it hard for the both of us.
All for One activated one of his quirks, which enhanced his power. He raised one hand and bloated up his forearm. With extreme force, he pushed All Might away from the air pressure launched at him. Buildings were destroyed as All Might flew through them. All for One used a combination of quirks with that attack against All Might.
What a delightful combination. Maybe a few more enhancers next time.
All for One looked at his arm and thought to himself which quirks to use against All Might the next time they clash. Bakugou was really shocked to see how far All Might was pushed back by All for One.
All Might! Don't you worry. It will take more than that to kill him.
All for One assured Bakugou that All Might wasn't killed just yet. He looked at Shigaraki and commanded him to leave the battlefield and take Bakugou with him. All for One activated another quirk, but this time sharp black tentacles with the red line pattern came out of his fingertips. The tentacles stabbed into an unconscious Kurogiri as All for One commands him to warp the rest of the League of Villains away. The tentacles was some sort of quirk that forced other people's quirk to activate against their will. All for One looked at Shigaraki and rushed them to flee from the battle.
Leave this place.
What about you? Shigaraki hesitated, unwilling to leave his master behind. All Might crashed at the debris, forced his way out, and proceeded to rush at All for One. All for One gradually raised himself from the ground and prepared for another one of All Might's attacks.
You're not thinking, Tomura. There remains much room for you to grow. You're mine!
All Might threw another smash, but was blocked effortlessly by All for One. While All Might was distracted, the rest of the League of Villains surrounded Bakugou. He noticed this and prepared himself to fight as well.
This is gonna be fun!
Bakugou waited for the villains to make a move. All Might noticed the villains that surrounded him and tried to warn Bakugou not to fight. However, All for One began to attack All Might, which kept him distracted from saving Bakugou from the other villains. All Might was too busy with All for One. He was worried about Bakugou and wanted to get him out safely, but couldn't do anything about it. Deku watched All Might fight from his hiding spot. He realized the current situation All Might was in. He knew that All Might was holding back against the villains so he wouldn't hurt Bakugou or the nearby citizens. Bakugou persistently avoided the relentless attacks from the League, doing the best he could not to get caught by them. He dodged Toga's sharp knives as they came slashing at him. He moved out of Magne's grasp and stayed away from Mr. Compress's reach.
I'm coming for you!
All Might ran at Bakugou so they could flee, but All for One prevented him by injecting his sharp tentacles at the hero's back and dragged All Might towards him.
I don't think so, because I am here!
Ironically using All Might's catchphrase, All for One continued to drag All Might, scraping him against the ground for effective damage, and then finally sent him into a building. Deku and the others were in deep thought. Deku, lost in his thought, tried to figure out ways to save Bakugou.
If there was an opening, we could have a chance to swoop in and grab Kacchan.
Deku thought if they could get Bakugou out of the way, All Might will be able to use the full extent of his power. Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we have a third channel called We the Celestial Naruto What If. We the Celestial Naruto What If mainly focuses on our Naruto What If series. If you are interested in content like this, please go check out the description below or click the eye icon at the top right corner. Now with that out of the way, let's get back to the story. As Deku struggled to think of a way to help Bakugou, he finally had a solution. He quickly turned to Ida and began to tell him his plan, along with the others.
Ida, listen. I have a plan.
Deku had a determined look on his face again.
You can't fight! I won't let you!
Ida misunderstood Deku and thought his plan was to fight the villains.
No, there's another way. A way that won't involve us in combat. That will let us escape and bring him back with us. Come on! We can still get Kachan back!
Deku didn't know for sure how his plan would work out afterwards, but proceeded to tell them.
Tell us your plan, Midoriya.
Todoroki and the others were curious to hear Deku out, so they looked and listened.
The thing is, it will all depend on him.
Referring to Bakugou, Deku's entire plan depended on whether Bakugou wouldn't be stubborn enough to escape with them.
If I did the plan myself, I don't think it will work. So Kirishima, you're the key for this being a success.
As Deku peered onto Kirishima and hoped his close relationship with Bakugou would help with the plan. Todoroki felt confused on why Kirishima would be important for the plan, and why if Deku did it himself, it wouldn't work.
We need more details, Midoriya. Come on. Right. Here's what I'm thinking.
As Deku began to explain his plans to Todoroki, Kirishima, Ida, and Yaoyorozu, All Might traded blows with All For One. All Might threw a large hook at him, but All For One grabbed his fist. All Might swung his other fist but was caught as well. Their hands locked in place once again, and a shockwave of air formed.
Are you holding back against me? Trying to keep the boy from being blown away?
All For One started to power up. His aura intensified. He emitted out a crimson red aura around him, almost like he's at bloodlust. All Might backed away from All For One as he sensed an incoming attack.
You put yourself in quite the predicament. So how will the hero prevail?
All Might grits his teeth. He felt stuck and worried for Bakugou's safety. Bakugou realized being there was a burden for All Might. He felt frustrated and angry with himself for being so weak. He knew that he had to get out of there before it's too late. After Deku finished explaining his plan with Ida and the others, they all stared at him like he was crazy.
Are you out of your mind?
Ida already having second thoughts about Deku's plan. However, Deku explained to him that Bakugou would realize the situation All Might was in, so he would have no choice but to comply.
I agree.
Todoroki nodded, agreeing with the plan.
He's staying on the defensive by keeping his distance from the villains. That's good for us. We have to move when he's got some space from him and the villains.
She heard Deku's plan. Yaoyorozu desperately called out to Ida to convince him to agree with Deku.
It is a gamble, but all things considered, there is much risk to us, and more importantly, we can change the tide of the fight.
Ida thought about it very carefully and, fortunately, agreed with Deku's plan. Deku and Ida stood on each side from Kirishima. They both held on to him and made sure they were holding tight enough. They planned to use Deku's quirk and Ida's Recipro Burst to propel themselves against the wall. They had Kirishima use his hardening quirk to ram against the wall in front of them and had Todoroki create a large ice ramp to help launch them high enough in the air. The villains from the ground noticed the ice ramp and saw them flying in the air. Most importantly, Bakugou saw them and heard Kirishima call out to him.
Come on!
Kirishima shouted as loud as he could for Bakugou to hear. He reached out his hand and hoped Bakugou would grab it. Bakugou had the chance to escape and didn't hesitate. He launched himself into the air using his explosions and grabbed Kirishima's hand.
You idiots!
Although he seemed angry, he was very thankful that they came.
Bakugou, use your quirk to
Before Ida got to finish, Bakugou interrupted him with his absurd rage and arrogance.
Don't tell me what to do! Damn you! Now is not the time to fight, you two!
The villains didn't expect them to come out of nowhere. They were staggered, and they had no idea what to do but watch them fly away. Shigaraki was irritated to see Deku and foil their plans once again. He ordered the villains to go after them. Magna used her quirk to pull back Mr. Compress and launched him forward towards the boys. However, no one expected for Mount Lady to be there. She suddenly gigantified herself at the nick of time. As Mr. Compress got close to the boys, He crashed into Mad Lady's face. With all the distractions happening, Todoroki and Yaoyorozu had the opportunity to flee. Magne, Spinner, and Twice continued to chase after the boys, but before they could, Gran Torino knocked them all unconscious as he arrived at the scene. Everything seemed to be in their favor, and All Might can now go all out towards All for One. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Now there are a few more things that I would like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer for this video as well as the editors for this video. Their details will be in the description. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord that is in the description of this video and hit the head on one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it for us for today's video. So thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you like the video. Until next time, peace out, mortals. Have an amazing day.